Good evening and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. I'm Hamza Idris. Tonight, the Nigerian government has rolled out a compendium of activities for a state burial of former President Muhammadu Buhari, who passed on yesterday at a London hospital in the United Kingdom. While the federal government declared Tuesday a work-free day across the country to mourn the death of the late Nigerian leader, it has also declared 1 week of national mourning and directed compliance with an earlier directive that all flags fly at half-mast. As the nation awaits the remains of the late president for the state burial on Tuesday, the federal government also announced that world leaders have indicated interest to take part in the burial, which will have in attendance President President Tinubu, I beg your pardon, and other former Nigerian leaders. On Daily Politics tonight, we'll be engaging with a co-author of the former late president's first biography unveiled in 1984. His comrade Iliyasu Gadu. He's also a columnist and public affairs commentator. Welcome to our studio.
Yeah, good evening. My condolences to the family of President Muhammadu Buhari. May Allah forgive his shortcomings and grant him Al-Jannah Firdaus.
I mean, our condolences to you also, who actually worked closely, I think, with other parties to, write his autobiography. I got to know this today. I never knew that there was something like that, but then we will come to that maybe in the course of the discussion. We have some tidbits. President Bola Tinubu will on Tuesday receive the remains of the former President Muhammadu Buhari in Katsina, ahead of his final interment in Daura in the state. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, disclosed this on Monday during a press briefing in Abuja. According to Idris, the body of the former president, who died on Sunday in a London hospital, is expected to arrive in Nigeria by 12 noon on Tuesday. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will personally receive the remains of the former head, he said, and I quote him. Upon arrival in Katsina, according to the minister, a brief military ceremony will be held at the airport before the body is moved to Daura. And in a related development, former military head of state Abdusalami Abubakar has revealed he was admitted in the same hospital in London as former President Muhammadu Buhari. Buhari died on Sunday, July 13, following a brief illness. He was aged 82. Reports emerged days ago that Abubakar and Buhari were battling undisclosed ailments, wasn't by all age. Abubakar is 83. The former military ruler told Channels Television that he learned of Buhari's death after he had been discharged, and I quote, "Unfortunately, we were in the hospital together, but I had been discharged. When I heard the news of his passing away, I quickly went there to condole with the family and see what can be done in order to get the corpse ready to be taken home. My relationship with Buhari goes as far back as 1962. We joined the military, he was my senior, and during the unfortunate civil war, we were fighting in the same sector. General Buhari is a gentleman who is very quiet but exceptionally honest. You can trust Buhari with anything on this earth, and he would not betray you." This was General Abdusalami Abubakar. And to set the stage for the conversation, here is a clip of the press conference addressed by the Minister of Information and National Orientation on the scheduled activities for the funeral.
Global stature and legacy of the late President Muhammadu Buhari. We are also aware that some foreign leaders have indicated their interest to be in Katsina and in Daura for the burial arrangements. We'll get details of those who have indicated to you in due course. Meanwhile, the President expects all Nigerians, as I said earlier, to use this period as a period of reflection, a period of mourning, and a period for all Nigerians to come together to honor one of the symbols of the unity of this country. Thank you very much. The floor will now be open to us to answer a few questions if you have them. Thank you.
That was Minister of Information and National Orientation Mohammed Idris on the funeral arrangement of late President Muhammadu Buhari. Comrade Gadu, you know, many of us are trying to actually recover from the shock. On a personal note, you know, also from Daura, from my Adua, so there is this personal attachment. And also, I lost my mom, you know, 3 weeks ago. So trying to even compose sometimes a Herculean task. But then, President Tinubu, it appears, you know, so fast in taking many decisions from the very hour that the death of President Buhari was announced. Was it unexpected?
No, I don't think it's unexpected. It is actually incumbent on him to do that, as in a number of ways. Buhari was the immediate past president of this country. He's a statesman in his own right. He's a patriot. He has, you know, and is befitting and appropriate. Belonging to the same political party, and they have quite a good rapport from the time that they together set up the APC, set up the move towards the merger to make the APC, and they've had so close relationship. And being a former or immediate past president, I mean, there is nothing Tinubu can do but to really take charge of what's of the burial.
Personally in charge.
To be personally in charge. It's not something. Well, he delegated the authority.
Yes, you see, and that was why I said the series of directives. You know, immediately after the death, there was a press release.
Yes.
You know, from the presidency to actually announce to do all that. Indeed, Buhari, you know, is gone, and in one breath, they now said, okay. Vice President Kashim Shettima should proceed to London. And I remember about this time, while we were holding Sunday Politics, then another statement, you know, the president eulogizing the former president, the directive about flags to fly at half-mast, and what have you. And today, more statements, because they said the president will personally receive the corpse in Daura, and then there will be, military honor for the president before the remains will be transported to Daura.
I think it shouldn't be surprising to us, because Buhari was both a military president, or rather a military leader, head of state, as well as a civilian president. So even on that note alone, he deserves the accolades. He deserves the honor being given to him by a sitting president. I mean, even if they were not from the same political party, as much as he was a former president, former military leader, he deserves what is being accorded him, especially in this regard. And of course, on a personal note, Tinubu feels that it is his responsibility, a personal responsibility, a personal duty to receive, to lead the events, lead the activities towards, according late President Muhammadu Buhari, a befitting burial.
And maybe that was what informed the public holiday tomorrow, Tuesday, meaning that all federal civil servants should remain at home to mourn the former president. And we gathered that some states in the Northwest have also declared a public holiday. And this is in addition to the 7-day national mourning. Will I be right if I say Nigeria is at a standstill as we speak?
In some respects, yes, because the death of someone who has impacted, on the psyche of the country, in the person of President Muhammadu Buhari, who means a lot to many people in this country, is something that definitely will cause some kind of feeling, some feeling of remorse, some feeling of solemnness.
Yes.
So yes, it's appropriate that Nigerians will feel a sense of loss because Buhari in his lifetime meant was so much to so many people, and there's a lot of mixed reaction regarding his life and times. He's an enigmatic personality, an icon, and you can only describe him in superlatives.
And it appears unprecedented. The president said all ministers, almost virtually all of them, should play a role or the other. Many of them are now in Katsina, some in Daura, some in Kano, and even embassies, Nigeria's embassies abroad, the International Conference Center, that is Tinubu Conference Center here at the State House, condolence registers have been opened, all in honor of the president. But something happened, while planning for this program, the producer and others, whoever, we call to come, they will say, are we going to talk about Buhari? If it's not about Buhari, I will not be available. And it's like, it is the same thing across, especially the media in the north. Almost every other person. In fact, yesterday we were supposed to host Hannatu Musawa on the program, but she called, she said, look, I don't even have the strength to come out and talk. Can we say this tells us more about the persona of the late president?
Yes, in many respects, because Buhari's life spans, I would say, the better part of independent Nigeria. He was thrust into the vortex of what was happening, or what happened, or what was happening as soon as Nigeria got independence. He was a young man then. He was a soldier, and all the activities, the events that took place leading to the first coup, the second coup, the civil war, and he lived through all of this, including even right up to yesterday, because he was still a very, very important figure even though out of power, out of power and out of the public space, but he was still a very, very important figure. He was a stabilizing factor in the polity, because even outside of politics, he was still being courted.
In fact, this reminded me of how politicians and what have you, transformed his house in Kaduna a mecca of sort, especially when, when he relocated from Daura to Katsina in his refurbished house. The series of, entourage he hosted in that house. People said that they were all going there maybe to cut, even to have a snapshot with him ahead of 2027 and all that.
Yeah, it's not surprising, because even at his death, even after having left power, he was the most distinguished Nigerian politician around, because he still retained a great deal of the following.
The 12 million votes.
Yeah, he still retained a great deal of the following.
We thought those votes have disappeared, with his...
well, not in terms of...
exit from power.
Those votes, of course, will not be available to him, because he wasn't going to contest again. Yes. But, there are people who, despite all the things that have been said about him, despite all the, misgivings about him, he still ranks in their minds, in their focus, as that person that, yes, exemplar. And that's because, unlike most politicians or political figures in Nigeria, he at least retains some modicum of integrity, incorruptibility, and those attributes are things that you can't find in many Nigerians. So they even though there'll be some misgivings about what he did while in power, nobody can come out and say Buhari was this. You could see the statement from General Abdul Salam.
Yes.
And a lot of people, even the statements coming from former president, military president Ibrahim Babangida, and many others. You could say he had his shortcomings like any other personality. The fact that he couldn't deliver on some of the things that we thought he could. But one thing you could say about General Muhammad Buhari, late President Muhammad Buhari, was that he wasn't, he wasn't given to corruption, because he had had the opportunity of occupying positions in earlier life that he could easily have become, wealthy beyond his imagination. He was a governor of the whole of the northeastern region. Yeah. He was a minister of petroleum when, many people did not know what an oil well was, and, and all that. A lot of projects that were undertaken under it were things you could easily have had personal interest in it. Yeah. And then he also became he led and delivered one of the greatest intervention programs in this country, the PTF, during the regime of Abacha. And in all of these positions, he had the opportunity to be wealthy beyond his imagination. He came out unscathed. So yes. On that score, on reflection, people would say, we could say he didn't, there are a lot of things I could say about him that he didn't, achieve. But for one thing, we could say is that he was not corruptible, and he was also a great patriot, even beyond what anybody could think. I mean, you could imagine, for instance, when he was GOC.
That should be in Jos, right?
Yeah, it was GOC, General Officer Commanding the 3rd Armored Division. His patriotism took him to the point of engaging foreign army, the Chadian rebels, who infiltrated into Nigeria, and he led his own troops to go and dislodge them from some of the islands that they occupied. And he went beyond that to go across the border to push them back into a buffer zone where they would not be able to attack Nigeria. If you remember, at that time, there was a crisis in Chad between the president, Gokuni Wadai, and rebel forces of Hissène Habré. And they were the ones, the forces of Hissène Habré wanted to take, some part of Nigerian territory as a forward operating base into Chad. And because Buhari was GOC and had responsibility over the entire Northeast.
So at that time, 3rd Division, headquartered in Jos,
yes,
was in charge of up to the Northeast.
Up to the border with Chad. So he was, all the military formations in that area were under his command, and he, against orders from the civilian government of President Shagari, went across the border because it became a diplomatic incident, and a lot of AU intervention was going on, trying to get President Shagari to get Buhari to back down, to go back to the Nigerian border. But he said, no, I want to give those guys...
He encroached.
There is a principle in international relations, there is a principle of, hot pursuit. If a country feels that some of the, is getting too many incursions from rebel forces from another country, there's a principle of hot pursuit. You could go across right into the other territory, the territory of the other.
It's not that you are contravening international convention.
Yeah, it's there in the statutes, the principle of hot pursuit, and it is granted where a nation feels that the central government is not able to rein in its rebels. Okay. So you are given that right, but within a certain limitation. And Buhari took advantage of that. Although, the president, the civilian government of President Shagari tried to restrain him, but he turned deaf ears to them. He said, and I quote him, he said, "I want to give those Chadians a bloody nose." These were his words. And he did give them a bloody nose. From that point onwards, we never had any problems with the Chadians. And in fact, this is one of the things that endeared him to a lot of Nigerians and to political figures who said, look, this man is somebody who is patriotic and we need to trust him. And of course, shortly after that, not too long after that, when there was a military coup, the choice of everybody, virtually everybody, was in the among the military guys was, look, this is the man we wanted.
Not because he was the most senior, probably. Maybe he has his mates at that time. I know.
Yeah, they were. I mean, shortly before the coup, there were 8 of them, classmates: Buhari, Babangida, Aduloju, Garba Duba. 8 of them were promoted to major generals from brigadier general. But there's what they call primus inter pares amongst them in terms of integrity, in terms of professional, approach to military acumen. He was considered. In any case, too, we had also the words of their senior in the person of General Tiwat Njuma, who when Murtala was killed in that coup 1976, it was the lot fell on him to now determine who to choose to take over the position of, because the person who was occupying that position of Chief of Staff Supreme Headquarters was General Obasanjo, and Obasanjo was moved to become the head of state, and so that position became vacant, and it was thought that somebody from the northwest, where Murtala came from, was going to be appointed. And General Tiwat Njuma, who was at that time the Chief of Army Staff, said, look, it was the choice was between General Eradua and, they were left colonels then. And
that is Eradua, the senior brother of
Shehu Musa Eradua,
yes, late president,
and Buhari, who were actually classmates again. So for him, as the senior, as somebody who was to make the choice, he said, look, I would prefer Eradua to be in that position, because he was, he was the one who, in fact, who fitted that position as Chief of Staff Headquarters, because it's mostly administrative and staff matters. But in the area of strict military discipline, I would choose Muhammadu Buhari, because I look at him as a future Chief of Army Staff because of his strict discipline, integrity, and ramrod, straightforwardness and uprightness. That is what the military needed at that time. And Tiwat Njuma was penciling General Buhari, it was a colonel then, as a future Chief of Army Staff. So that position went to, the position of Chief of Staff, Supreme Headquarters, went to General, who later became General Shehu Musa Eradua.
You sound like a historian. Of course, I know you as a diplomat. You worked in the foreign service. But Mr. Gadu, you served as co-author, if I'm not wrong, of the former late president's first biography unveiled in 1984. Could that be correct? Or
yes, you are correct.
You were a contributor. But what I don't understand is, I've never heard of that biography. Was it published? It
was published. In fact, apart from being published, it was reviewed in several papers, Daily Times, New Nigerian at the time, and a few other papers. It was shortly after he took over.
Yes, because I can see it was in 1984.
Yeah, he took over, on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day,
31st December.
31st December, and it was, the coup took place between 31st December and, 1st January. So he took over, and of course, the idea came to the Federal Minister of Information to do, because he was not well known. So the idea, at the time, it was just Muhammadu Buhari who, sort of. So the idea came...
His exploits were not
he was as quiet as Abdul Salam said, he was a quiet person. He wasn't given to ostentation. He wasn't given to, display of flamboyance. So a lot of people were saying who? But he was well known within the military circles for his, integrity and character. So the Federal Minister of Information... He was doing his
case without drama.
Yeah, without drama. He wasn't,
He would go for results.
Yeah. So the Minister of Information decided to do a biography of the new president. Because there were a lot of...
Federal Minister of Information.
Yeah, Federal Minister of Information. I was working with Federal Minister of Information then. In fact, it was the responsibility of a different department. I didn't belong to that department. But when the team went to see him at Dodan Barracks in Lagos to interview him and to seek his approval for the
biography.
For the biography, he now asked them questions. He said, "Look, I don't see any anybody who can speak my language, which is Hausa, amongst you. And some of the places you are going to do the research is right down in Daura, in Katsina, in Kaduna.
The Murkul in Katsina,
yes,
the village.
So he said, look, if you want me to give you approval, you must prove to me that you have somebody who could speak Hausa, who could understand Hausa language, and who also has a background in history. So that is how
you were co-opted.
I was co-opted from my department, which is the external publicity department, and I was co-opted to join the team to do the research, the background research, to interview people. We interviewed people like General Musa Eradua. We interviewed General Martins Adamu, who was his boss, his direct boss, because what he told us was Buhari was his adjutant. We interviewed Justice Abdullahi, former president of the Court of Appeal, who is from Katsina. He was his classmate in Katsina. We interviewed Fatahu Abdullahi, who was a former editor of New Nigerian. We interviewed Maman Daura. In fact, Maman Daura coordinated the movements of people. So along the line, we interviewed those people. We interviewed the late Emir of Daura, Muhammad Bashar.
Yes.
Yeah, they took us to his house. We interviewed him. We researched on his military background with a number of people who served with him, either as his seniors,
including education.
Yeah, education.
Why I'm asking some of these questions, of course, we have a few tributes here, but many Nigerians would like to know the true Buhari. Of course, we are still in the morning period, but then this is a serious program. I read it somewhere that, okay, when he was to contest election, was it in 2011 or 2015, the issue of his educational background came out. And now you're talking to some of his classmates. And of course, we've seen a lot of photos while he was president. You normally go to Daura for Salah, and then you will see the old classmates coming to his house, and then they would have pictures after they eat and all that. Can we say it's actually political brickmanship?
No, I don't think so. I think it's part of the mischief about the persona. Buhari is not somebody, as I said, who is given to ostentatious, conveyance of his personality. He's somebody who likes to do things quietly on the quiet side, and that's his nature. He's not somebody who likes to advertise himself as one hero.
So when they say he didn't, because of course, all of us political reporters were wondering, look, why was the president, former head of state at that time, silent when people are asking about the primary school you attended, the secondary school you attended, and all that. And then we were saying, could it be possible for someone to attend the position of Major General? Beyond that, head of state and all that, and then just for political convenience.
I hear
yes.
who helped to research his background right in Daura, where he was born. He was called Leko. Leko is a local term for somebody who I think was born after women or something like that.
Okay,
in form of
like Tanko.
Like Tanko. He was called Leko. I stand to be corrected. And we interviewed people with whom he went to school. General Shehu Musa Eradua was his classmate in Katsina. And Justice Abdullahi was also his classmate. And there were a few other people who went to school with him, classmates of his who went to school with him. And there were photographs in that same book. The title of the book is General Muhammadu Buhari, Nigeria's 7th head of state. There are pictures of him and his classmates in the uniform of their school. There were people who went to school with him, who graduated with him from that school, and who gave testimonies of him. At that time they gave us the interview, they were oblivious that somebody somewhere, sometime would question that. But they were just giving us their views about what he was.
Innocent.
Exactly. They were telling us who he was. They were telling us how disciplined he was. They were telling us how strict he was. They were telling us how, regimented he was, even at that time, before even getting into the profession of soldiering. So if anybody comes to say, in Nigeria, if people are not given to research things. They just assume and take it.
But I later understand, Malam Gadu, that Nigeria is not actually operating in isolation, going by the way once you are aspiring for political office, people will just go haywire, saying all sorts of things. Look at the US. And I remember even in Lagos, was it 2011? When the current president wanted to remove Ambode, I remember that there was this debate to the, mental alertness and even fitness of this current governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu. Some said they have some documents about him that he was insane at certain time. And that's why some people are questioning the integrity of the kind of democracy being practiced, not only in Nigeria, but in all countries that are practicing the same.
I can tell you for sure that some of the people who were making all those allegations against General Buhari or President Buhari were people who didn't even know where he came from. They could not even place his life history. If General Buhari, as they claimed, did not have the correct papers, there was no way he could have gotten into the military academy. And don't forget, that military academy was being run by the British guys.
So you can't just
you couldn't just get into that. So people wanted to believe what they wanted to believe, and because it's like, look, yes, we didn't like this guy. The narrative is out there. He's a bigot. He's this. He's that. So so everything that was said about him was, people expected that to be carried because that is the narrative they wanted to be said about Buhari. But the truth about it is that some of these guys could not and did not even take the liberty to go right down to his roots
to find out.
That is why when the people came, when the team from Federal Ministry of Information came to talk to him about the need for a book on him, he now insisted that you must get somebody who at least understands
the
Hausa,
language and all that.
because you'll be presented with information that you need to cross-check or need to know at that point.
And you happen to be.
I happen to be fortuitously selected.
Will you say that the late president left this world with his own side of the story, because he hasn't written his own autobiography? I saw an interview where the anchor asked, when should Nigerians and others expect his autobiography? I think he said that he would not write.
I don't think Buhari is the kind of person, he has been accused of being rigid. But Buhari is not the kind of person who will crave the limelight just because, he's the kind of person who believes that, look, I am what I am.
But now people will keep asking questions till eternity that, okay, he didn't say much about himself. You remember his bosom friend, Babangida, recently unveiled his autobiography, despite the fact that it generated a lot of interest, a lot of controversy, and all that. At least he has done that. Well,
in the case of Buhari, I can tell you again, because after we did that, which was not so detailed,
yes,
but just
for convenience at that time,
for convenience to be able to present to the Nigerian people who the new president, who the new head of state was. Subsequently, there was a need by some of his close associates and friends to do a detailed one. I was contacted to come, and we visited the general in his house in Kaduna, somewhere in Hali Road and Toro Road, and we had a discussion with him about that, because they were able to convince him that, look, there are a lot of things about you.
A myth.
Yeah, so we need to be able to get it across to people, detailed one, because the previous ones we had, which the co-author is here, has not assuaged the thirst.
The thirst of people who
you have remained enigmatic, you have remained ascetic, and we want to really know who Buhari was. So he agreed to that, and he agreed to that. Yes, tentatively, and he directed the team to go and meet with Mamandora.
I think his uncle, right?
Yeah, Mamandora, who is his uncle, who is coordinator and things like that. And of course, it never got off the ground. But subsequently, I think there was a publication by John Payden.
Okay.
A publication by John Payden on Buhari's life, which is more detailed.
Than what all others have.
Yes, than what we did, because the co-author with whom we did that was a director in the Federal Ministry of Information. And then what we had was not detailed enough, because you needed to get to the archives to know about his military background, full military background. You needed to go to some of the staff schools he attended, both in Nigeria and outside Nigeria. You needed quite a lot, and you needed a real, how do I put it now? You needed funding. You needed somebody who had access to.
And maybe going by his pattern life.
Yeah, so
he wasn't willing to.
He wasn't willing because he felt, whatever it is, it's there. Let the people, judge themselves.
All right. Yes, Malis, Iliyasu. Let me quickly read a few condolences from outside the shores of Nigeria. This one from Benin's President Patrice Talon, who said, "I was saddened to hear the passing of President Muhammadu Buhari, whom I have had the opportunity to work with on strengthening the ties between Benin and Nigeria." And from Senegal, the head of state, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, he celebrated the memory of a key figure in Nigeria and African political life. In faraway China, Lilian Jian, the spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, former President Buhari was a distinguished leader of Nigeria who guided his nation to remarkable achievements in national development. As a longtime friend of the Chinese people, he played a pivotal role in advancing China-Nigeria relations and fostering win-win cooperation between our two countries. I want you to comment on this, because it appeared that during his time, he really wanted to concretize Nigeria's relationship with China. I remember I personally interviewed the Chinese ambassador at the time, talking about this currency swap, that's Naira and Yuan.
Yeah, well, if you know General, sorry, I keep calling
him General. General is also a general.
Yeah, if you knew President Buhari, he was somebody who, as I said, was a great patriot. He felt that Nigeria was not getting the kind of reckoning that it should, as the largest country in Africa, the largest economy in Africa, and he felt that his economic policies should, be on the basis of, reciprocity, and also on the basis of diversifying our economic relationship, and that he felt that we were too given to the Western side, and we should be able to recognize the emerging
democracies,
emerging powers,
whatever,
emerging economies, of which China was one. And he felt that we shouldn't close our doors to alternative sources of capital, alternative sources of development. And the Chinese, and he quoted the Chinese. He visited China, I think more than one time or so, and that is in pursuance of the need to diversify Nigeria's sources of economic assistance, technical assistance. And during his time, we saw that manifested in some of the programs, some of the projects that, that were embarked upon by Chinese.
Like the Belt and Road.
Belt and Road, because the Chinese were giving out a lot of, were out to, cultivate relationship with a number of countries.
Was he not scared, even though you didn't serve us in one of his age or whatever, to tilt towards the Asian tigers.
No, he felt that
when America, was looking around and all that.
He felt that it was within the rights of Nigeria as a sovereign country to be able to at least, try other countries that were emerging that could offer us, development projects and development assistance, and yes, we were in the Western camp, but also that should not preclude us from, talking to other people to see what assistance they could give us, especially on the terms that he felt was favorable to Nigeria. And so that was what informed, I believe, his overtures to the Chinese. And of course, you notice that during his time, a lot of Chinese projects were here. I mean, the railway project from here, from Abuja to Kaduna, railway projects from even Itakpe, even the one in Lagos. Were all done by, there's a University of Transportation
in Daura,
which also was under the auspices of Nigeria-China relationship. So it was Buhari's thinking that, look, we need to also, while being in the Western camp, based on our relationship with, Britain, United States of America, Germany, and the rest of them, we should also, in keeping with our sovereignty, also consider other areas.
And can we say this has not affected the U.S. disposition to Nigeria? And let me quickly read so that you can comment what the United States mission in Nigeria said. It praised a leader in court whose life was defined by service, discipline, and a commitment to restore integrity to public office.
Yeah, I mean, if you notice, even though a lot of people the Americans gave him the benefit of the doubt because they realized that his intentions towards the Chinese and towards seeking other sources of assistance were noble, were for the interests of Nigeria. They were ready to give him the benefit of the doubt. That is why the previous government of Goodluck Jonathan, when they applied for assistance from Americans, they couldn't get any. And when Buhari came, they, they gave him the assistance to get the Tucano jets. It was not given to Goodluck Jonathan.
So will you now say that his foreign relationship was robust in a way?
It was robust because his character. They didn't see him. He didn't come out to them as the typical African leader who was interested in deals, who was interested in corrupt practices, who was interested in making, scheming cuts out of what he. They really saw in him somebody who really wanted to get the best for Nigeria. So he resisted the temptation to see development projects as a source of personal aggrandizement. It was in keeping with his character. It was keeping with his upbringing, right from time, to ensure that nothing was done to nothing derailed him from his commitment to integrity, commitment for the best practices for Nigeria. You could say that people around him were corrupt. You could say that yes, he didn't follow up on some of the things that he was supposed to follow
Which,
up.
of course, people, even though people say that we don't talk about the dead, but when you look at the social media, many are taking on this, that, of course, we agree, Buhari, pious man, he did not steal, but then he allowed others to steal.
Yeah, well, because actually you have to understand where he's coming from. He, in his earlier coming as a military head of state, he really planned to.
And he dealt with them. Some people, there are people who bagged 300 years, right?
Exactly. It was, when we sit down to talk with him, he was like moved. He was like angry. He was like, it was incredulous to him that people could steal,
the way a manner.
Yeah, the way a manner people were stealing. People who were entrusted with, public trust could mindlessly steal. And so he was he came with the intention to clean the organs tables. And even at that time, the IMF and the World Bank were trying to get him to accept conditionalities, and he felt it was improper because the conditionalities were such that would take Nigeria, by his own reckoning, down the economic partition. But subsequently, he was overthrown, and within the time that he was overthrown to the time that he ventured into politics, he had opportunity to do quite a lot of introspection about what transpired, about the betrayal by his close colleagues, by his friends, and then the experiences he had while out of power, tempered his judgment. And when he became the military, civilian head of state, there were a lot of things that tempered his activities. He had that zeal, but he also felt that, look,
most likely he was impeded by the rules governing democracy. And then don't forget, you have to do certain things by going through the courts instead of decree. You have to talk to the National Assembly instead of the military council.
Yes,
and all that.
And he had to govern by the Constitution. So his ability to carry out some of the things that he wanted to carry out were constricted in a way by the constitutional provisions of the situation. And then, he also felt that, look, I can only go so far. And because the political class, he was an enigma to them. He was the kind of person who didn't want to play by the kind of rules that they wanted, but he also needed them. Because it's like, look, if you want to change Nigeria, you have to at least be part of the system. But again, those guys were smart. They were smart, and they realized that, look, yes, we needed Buhari to get to power, but we are going to make sure that he doesn't succeed in doing the things that he did when he was there. And he realized that too. So he now decided, well, I will do as far as I can go. And you remember when he first came to power, he made that pronouncement and said, look, if anybody, he said, I'm for nobody.
I'm for nobody. I belong to nobody. I am for everybody.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
It was a statement of intent.
Yeah.
And he also was reportedly called members of immediate family and said, look, if anybody thinks he's going to be wealthy by being associated with me, better forget it.
Yeah.
This is where I'm going. And some of the steps he took at the beginning, at the initial stage of his government, were actually on the way towards making sure that only the right people. But then the pressure of politics, the pressure of people who wanted to be part of it, who wanted
made
to get
all those things very difficult.
So I, for instance, I remember I wrote an article, a very scathing article about him, which was titled Buhari, the Messiah Who Messed Up. That was the title of, because...
Do you have any regret for that?
Well, at the time I did it, a lot of people in this country were really expressing the disappointment because they felt that the Buhari that we thought, one of the reasons why Buhari was endeared himself to people was that his history of fighting against corruption and fighting against those vices was what people thought. And when he came, he looked helpless. He was helpless in trying to stop some of the obvious
impractions.
So at that time, I did, but on second thoughts, on retrospection, I realized that I was judging the man incorrectly because he was fighting against odds that were too powerful.
And I'm happy that you said this. And from London, we got this story that Vice President Kashim Shettima paid a condolence visit to the family of the late president. And he expressed the sympathies of Nigerians and President Bola Tinubu. And finally, to ensure a dignified and well-coordinated program, the president, that is Tinubu, has constituted an interministerial committee to oversee the state burial in collaboration with the Katsina State government. The committee is chaired by the Secretary of the Government of the Federation, Senator George Akumi, and it has many ministers, like the Minister of Economy, Budget, Defense, Information, Works, Interior, FCT, Housing, and all that. So it's like Nigeria, as we said earlier, is at a standstill in honor of the president who will be late.
Well, I think, Hamza, you have to understand this.
Finally, yeah.
Yeah, you have to understand that, like in football, you may have a player who is like a utility player whose importance when he's playing is not recognized. But when you remove him out of the...
That is when you now see
that's what's happening with Buhari. Because Buhari has turned out to be more democratic than even the Democrats of today. And APC, his party, will lose him a lot, apart from Nigerians. Because Whatever you like to say about him, he is the guy that is stabilizing force within the party and within the politics.
And he's no more.
He's no more.
May his soul rest in
Inshallah.
Thank you very much, Iliyasu Gadu, diplomat, public affairs analyst, and columnist, for putting context to our conversation today, especially the part you played in writing his biography when he was military head of the state in 1984. We have to have you some other time.
It's my pleasure.
Ah, yes, Nigeria is still mourning, and that brings us to the end of today's package of Daily Politics. Join us tomorrow for another interesting edition. From here, bye-bye, I'm Hamza Idris.